Hi, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm really thrilled and honored to have with us as my guest Chris Do, who's a loud introvert with a big mission. He wants to teach a billion people how to live doing what they love. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Richard. I like the Hsu Untied. Very clever.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Chris, let me start by asking you, what is a loud introvert?
Mm. Well, some people think that by being shy or being afraid of doing public speaking, that makes you an introvert. I just want to clear that up. Based on the definition I was taught, introversion has a lot to do with energy management when you're around people.
Hmm.
As an introvert, it's very draining for me to be around people, like large groups of people. I have to go home, take a nap, I have to recover, and sometimes it would take me a day and a half to do that. And so when I told my students who discovered me much later on in my career, like, there's no way you can be an introvert. Like, look how excited you are in this classroom. And I see you making content on social media. Like, what is going on with you?
Yeah.
And so I have to explain to them, like, this is a whole process. Many years ago, my business coach, God rest his soul, since passed away, he told me that I'm like the world's best kept secret. I need to get out there. It's impacting my personal development. It's impacting my career, and especially the business that I was doing at that time. And so he encouraged me to get out there. I was deathly afraid. I did it. I bombed quite a few times. Heart is pounding out of my chest, and it's taken me days to recover. I'd lose sleep leading up to these things.
Huh.
But I get used to it and I start doing it, and I'm pretty good at pretending. And now I've amassed a pretty large social following. I do public speaking on a regular basis. So I have to tell people I'm a loud introvert, an introvert who's learned how to be amongst the extroverts and do public speaking, to put myself out there, to hopefully lead the way for many other introverts and say, if that fool can do it, maybe I can do it too.
Well, that's an interesting thing. Let me ask you, do you still get heart pounding and a lot of energy draining enervation after doing public speaking and a lot of extroverted stuff, or you actually can overcome it?
I think you can overcome it. There are still the jitters, but not nearly as bad as it used to be.
I
And
see.
just so that people don't think I'm making up stories here,
Yeah.
I literally lost sleep and lost weight days and weeks leading up to an event.
Huh.
Now, at that point in time, I'm speaking maybe once or twice a year. And you might as well be starting over every single time if it's going to be that long between public speaking gigs. I'd forget how to use the software. I'd forget, like, how do I structure this conversation? And I was very much in my head. And
Yeah.
the first thing that happens is you start to worry about the words that you may or may not be able to say on stage. You get stage fright.
Yeah.
You also worry a lot about who's the lineup, like who's speaking before you and after you. And there's a lot of comparison, yeah, like imposter monster syndrome things going on.
Mm.
And I've learned a lot of different techniques, and none of them worked. I tried the Amy Cuddy power posing where you stand like Superwoman or Superman, you occupy a lot of space. I've tried that. I tried the vocal exercises.
Uh-huh.
That didn't work. I tried the breathing exercise. So I would be in the bathroom 30 minutes prior to getting up on stage, going la, 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 brrr, and doing all those things. And people are like, what the freakazoid is going on here? And then I could feel my chest beating, gasping for air. When I finally hit the stage, my heart is pounding out of my chest and I'm burping because I'm not breathing on a regular basis and my throat gets all dry. I've been hyperventilating. I think something is going on.
Huh.
The trick that really worked for me is a complete mindset shift on what it is I was doing. See, like many people, I thought, I'm going to be on stage. I want to sound smart. I want to be intelligent. I want to impress people with what I know. I want to make sure that I deliver a perfect presentation. Visually, there's no mistakes. I'm not stumbling on any words. I'm not using filler words. I'm not a deer caught in the headlights, if you will. And I thought that's what it was about. And that made it worse. That compounded the problem because I just kept thinking more about myself.
Huh.
Lo and behold, one day, my wife, who's into Eastern philosophy, meditation,
Yeah.
religion, theology, she's watching this video and there's a Chinese monk. And he's sitting there, he's talking, and I just catch just a tiny sliver of his conversation. And he asked the audience a question. He's like, do you know why I'm smiling ear to ear?
Mhm.
It's because I'm wishing each and every one like blessings and well-being.
Hmm.
And I find that when I do that, it centers me, it reorients my energy, and I'm not afraid to speak to you. And that really hit me. It hit me really hard.
Hmm.
If I stop focusing on what I want and focusing on serving others, a lot of the pressure I felt was gone. I knew that I have things to share and things to help. And if I can help, like as they say, it's a cliche, if I could help a handful of people, not everyone, just a handful, I've done a pretty good thing that day. And that really allowed me to settle in. And I keep reminding myself, this is why I'm here. I'm here to give. I'm here to be of service, not to be in the spotlight.
Well, that's a good segue into talking about what you do then. You say your mission is to help people do what they love. How did this mission come about, and how do you go about doing that?
I started my business, which was a service design company. We made commercials and music videos in 1995. I did that for a good portion of 20 years. In between that time, I taught at Art Center and I worked. And I felt like I was two different people. I'm really into pop culture and comic books, so I'll make many references, and here's the first one today. There's a character, his name is Bruce Banner, and when he loses control of his emotion, he explodes into this hulking being, the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
And he lives a dual life, and those two are not at peace, and they're always fighting each other. I felt like when I went to school, my creative soul, my spirit was filled, my cup overflowed. But financially speaking, I don't know how it is at different universities, but they don't pay a whole lot of money. In fact, I paid freelancers who worked for me more money than the school paid me to work. And they don't even count the time in which you prepare, the time in which you commute to and from school, and the residual thinking that you have to do to prepare for the next class that you're going to do. And so I thought, I'm doing this for love, right? I keep telling myself that. And then on the other side, I was making commercials for a living, financially very rewarding. But after doing it for a decade plus, it's like nothing in my life is really changing. Sure, clients are a little bit bigger, budgets are bigger, creative sometimes is more challenging, but I'm not getting the same fulfillment. And it took me a long time to find a way where I can integrate these two beings, my desire to teach and to serve others, and to be able to make a living doing what I love. And I found that in 2014, almost by accident. One of my former classmates, Jose, he said, Chris, let's go make some YouTube videos. And at that point in time, I really turned my nose down on YouTube. Like, there's a bunch of amateurs and wannabes and people who want to be famous, clout chasing. And there are not a lot of serious people who know things teaching on YouTube at that point in time. He's like, let's just do it and let's try. I reluctantly agreed, and the decision to do so changed my life and my career.
What did you do? What kind of videos did you make?
Initially, what we did was we made videos to talk about a product he and I authored. We were teachers, and we wanted to bring some awareness to the things that we were doing. So that made a lot of sense for both of us. And eventually I started to figure out how to teach online in an asynchronous way, looking into a piece of glass that doesn't emote back. It's very dysregulating, as you know. It can be very tough for extroverts and for introverts. But eventually I figure it out, and a light bulb goes off in my mind. I'm thinking now, I need to figure out a business model to do this because I love doing this so much now. It took 2.5 years to build a real business. Like the first year in business that we were making videos on the internet, we made, I think, $18,000. Not a lot. And that's two of us working on this. And so most people would quit, but I'm like, I think we can improve upon this. And each and every year for the first 4 years, we would 3x our growth. It's easy to say that because initially it wasn't a lot of money, but eventually we got it to be a real business. And last year we did $4.5 million in revenue. I don't do client work anymore. I haven't done it in years.
Oh, wow. Interesting. What is it about your videos that you think, how do you attribute its success and why it resonates?
Very good question, Richard. I'm not 100% sure because I have always felt that we don't do the kinds of things that a lot of people get interested in. We teach creative people how to run a business. It's pretty boring stuff, relatively speaking, when you see really fun videos, people jumping off cliffs, traveling, eating exotic things. I'm literally many times in front of a whiteboard with a marker saying, here's how you run your business so that you can have some profit. And what I didn't realize was people weren't hungry for the design stuff I was teaching. They were hungry for the business stuff, because the design stuff, there's a lot of people out there, but there weren't a lot of people in the creative space who actually ran a business, have worked with the Fortune 500 companies, who've negotiated small jobs and really big jobs and can talk about it, and who's willing to talk about it in a transparent way.
Hmm. Interesting. So, but I mean, you obviously you have feedback on like what content. So that's the content that you find that your viewers like the most.
Yes.
So how have you kind of expanded on that? I mean, is that, I mean, where are you, how have you, continually refresh the content?
Mm. Well, you kind of grow up on YouTube. Like I'm not a young person when I say grow up. I mean growing up meaning you mature and you develop your online persona, your energy, how you teach, what works, what doesn't, how much production to put into something, what is too little and too much. And
No.
you continually make refinements or you try brand new ideas.
Hmm.
It was not by accident, but I was watching another creator's videos. It's called Veritasium.
Mm-hmm.
You may know who he is. And he teaches science-based things, and
Mm.
his videos get lots and lots of views. And I
Hmm.
noticed one thing he was doing. He had homemade paper tape cutout graphics, and we were using sophisticated animation tools to make our graphics. And I was thinking, there's something here. There's
Hmm.
something almost like a magic trick that's being revealed each time he would pull back a layer. He
Hmm.
literally had string and he would cut it with a pair of scissors and then would fall open. And I
Hmm.
was like, this is really mesmerizing.
Hmm.
I think as a human, we can appreciate that this was handcrafted and that there was a bit of a reveal, just like magicians, right? It's like, what is going to happen next? And it's
Hmm.
creating this thing that Brendan Kane calls the Jenga effect. Whenever we play Jenga, we know what's going to happen. It will eventually fall over. It's
Yeah,
the
right.
tension that's created in that moment where it's like, when will it fall over? And at
Hmm.
what point? And who's going to be the hand that does it?
Hmm.
And that's what keeps people interested. So you
Hmm.
learn to tell stories in 3 or 4 minute increments that keep escalating the stakes, and you add something else. And then this happened, and then this happened, and you keep doing that. So you learn.
Hmm. Is there something in your childhood that, when you reflect upon, how much you love doing this, that, indicated that this is something you'd always enjoy doing? Like, did you teach things as a kid, or were you a tutor? I mean, what kinds of things did you do in your youth that might have give you a hint that this is what you'd end up doing?
My Asian parents would be embarrassed that I'm going to tell you this, but I'm a above average student, not a great student. So the
Uh-huh.
idea of tutoring and mentoring was not even in my mind.
Uh-huh.
The first clue that I got that this is something I might want to do
Yeah.
is when my cousin, same age as me, his
Uh-huh.
dad got a video uh, camcorder, like
Uh-huh.
a really old school one with the big tapes and all that stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
8, I believe.
Yeah.
And he would let me play with it, and we were using the camera to shoot skateboarding videos. And I remember, because I'm back to the whole introversion thing, we have to do oral reports, something that would scare me to death. I would pick the very last day to schedule my talk or my presentation. And I asked the teacher one time, could I do a video presentation? And she looked at me, she's like, yeah, that sounds really creative. That sounds like extra credit. It was an extra credit in my mind. I was like, how do I escape speaking in front of people?
Mm.
So I would use the camcorder. You wouldn't see my face. I would make some graphics and I would shoot that in camera editing, like start, stop, okay, start, stop. And you kind of have to figure it out. And she gave me extra credit for this. And I got out of doing public speaking. So that was probably a clue, but it wouldn't be many, many years later until I figured out this is what I'm going to do.
Hmm. So now that you've done these videos, you have, obviously whatever, hundreds of thousands, millions of viewers. Where do you kind of go from here? Like, how do you continue to get your message, or are you doing different things? What does the future bring for you?
I still think there's a ton more people to reach just in America alone.
Mm.
But one of the fascinating things to me is what's really cool about social is you put something out into the universe and you never know who's going to receive that message on the other end.
Mm.
And so I get to run into people here in America and across, like everywhere I travel, people who are impacted by the content that we create. And we're teaching people how to better their lives, how to make money, how to negotiate, how to be able to pursue something that they've been told all their lives, you cannot make money doing this, and they're able to, and they share their stories with me. So what's fascinating to me is we have people in Nigeria, in Ghana, South Africa, all parts of India and Asia who are receiving the content. And I was thinking, in some places, like, do they even have internet there? Do you even speak English? How is this even possible? So this is a testament to such a transformative technology. So we still have a long, long way to go, Richard. We need to improve how we teach. We probably need to add additional languages, but probably different teaching models. I think we're still in version 1.2 of what it is that we're doing. not even into 2.0 yet.
Hmm. Now, have you organized your thoughts into a book, or do you have a book out now?
Yeah, I wrote a book, and it was because so many fans had asked, like, hey, can you just put some of your thoughts together?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's self-published. It's called A Pocket Full of Dough, and it's very high-level concepts and basically sharing the lessons I've learned in my life. And so we tried distributing it through Amazon. Unfortunately, we weren't that smart about how we designed the book. It's very fragile, or it's very delicate. And so it got busted up. So now we have to ship them ourselves. So it's a little bit more difficult than I had anticipated.
Now, you make all the videos yourself? I mean, is that your full-time job, or do you still do research and other stuff on the side? Or give me a feel for the range of activities you. Obviously, it's not just the videos, I'm assuming.
Yes, there's a whole ecosystem behind this, because you can sustain a living making videos and just using AdSense as passive revenue,
Yeah.
but it's not the way that you want to build a media company. So right now, I think there are 12 employees that work with me full-time remotely now since COVID. And there's a whole team of us. So there's 4 editors who work with me. Some of them write and produce with me, but most of them edit. And so what I'm doing is, if I'm doing a video podcast like this one, they'll cut long form, mid form, and shorts from it. If I'm going to go do some public speaking, they'll show up and they'll record that and chop that up, a workshop. Or they'll say, hey, Chris, there are 3 or 4 topics we need you to talk about because we feel the community needs to hear from you on this. I'll do some research, organize my thoughts. I'll record the camera like this here in my studio. And then they'll just cut it up, add motion graphics and titles, and that's what they do. So in order to sustain ourselves, we have courses that we sell. These are self-study, asynchronous ways of learning. We have multiple coaching communities for different tiers of entrepreneurs. And those are some of the few ways that they can get involved. We have also sponsors, like big corporations who give us money to help promote or bring awareness to their product or service.
How much time do you spend reading other materials or other things to get more ideas, or just spending time just thinking about stuff?
When I'm good, I try to read a book a week.
Wow.
But my schedule is pretty crazy. So there will be periods in which I'll read 3 books in a week, and weeks or even months that go by that I haven't finished a book. So you can see behind me, there's lots of books, and I have not even read, I would even say, 1/10 of the books yet. But there's a lot more books than what you see here. Because whenever somebody recommends a book to me, I just instantly buy it and put it on the shelf. So if I'm going to speak about something, I like having my own library that I don't have to go anywhere. So I'm like, oh, let me see what books on sales I want to read today because I'm going to speak about something. I'll look that up. And so that's how I replenish the well, or get new ideas.
Do you get a lot of good ideas from reading the books? I mean, is that an important part of your idea germination?
I think I get more answers than ideas. Ideas come from reading comments, from people responding to our videos, because here's how I think social media should be done. You put out a piece of content, the conversation just began, it didn't end. And most content creators just walk away, and they're leaving what I think the real gold is. So you and I both know, like when you talk, when you lecture, it's a great way to teach, but it's a horrible way to learn. So you don't know what people learn until you see their reaction, and their only reaction that I can see is when they leave a comment. I'm confused by this, or this took too long, or this doesn't make sense to me. They don't always say it that nicely, right? They can get pretty aggressive, but I hear like, okay, this needs improvement. Oh, you don't understand this. Oh, I see. And they have what I would consider crazy theories and responses. And so that gives me a prompt. How do I explain this differently so people like you can understand? If you already think like me, you're not watching my video. There's no point. We're just talking to each other. So I really need to understand how they think. Then I go to the library and say, like, I wonder who might have an answer to this. I might start on Google. I might watch another YouTube video. And then it's the back and forth. Then another piece is created. And it never ends. The more content you create, the more ideas you get from the comments that come back.
Do you think you have like a gift for teaching or a gift for explaining? Is that how you would characterize yourself?
I think I do. And I say that I'm not being humble or braggadocious here, but I did teach for about 12 years at Art Center prior to making my first YouTube video. It's the happiest I've ever been in my life. And I'm trying to figure out a way that I can do this at scale. The problem with teaching at a private art school is you have at most 10 or 12 students at a time, oftentimes 6, which is a good number. And you can really spend 30 minutes to talk to each student and work through the problem. But there are no cameras. There's no way for me to document and push this out into the universe. And I've been figuring out how to do that in a way that I can do in a long-term sustainable format. And so, yes, I do like to teach. And I'll tell you what I think my skill set is. I like using the Socratic approach. So when someone asks a question, they want to know the answer. I try to ask questions back to them to get them to figure out how to solve the problem. I think visually. So when they tell me a problem that's very complex, we'll go to the board, we'll sit there and we'll diagram it out. Sometimes it looks like science class, but we're just trying to map what their thoughts are. And when you see your words articulated with visuals, or your ideas articulated as visuals and simple words, it's much easier to process and to digest, especially if one of your primary ways of learning is visual.
Do you also do professional coaching? I mean, you mentioned you had a wonderful professional coach who passed away, unfortunately, but do you do that for CEOs and other executives now?
Yes, I provide one-on-one coaching. They can just book me hourly online. It's $1,500 an hour. It started at $500. I got booked too much and moved up to $1,000. Now it's at $1,500. I might have to raise it again because it's not scalable. It's one of the challenges.
Yeah,
And if they want to do group coaching with me, there's different tiers in which they can join, which makes it much more affordable, but it just means that I can't listen to you only.
Do you enjoy doing that? I mean, I assume you do.
I do. It is draining too. I know you probably know this. When you do one-on-one coaching, especially, I take that time very seriously. I'm taking copious notes. I'm doing follow-ups with them. I'm making sure they're getting the transformation that they need. So it is a lot of work.
Yeah. How do you allocate your time between thinking of content versus actually producing the content? Is it a balance or is it 80-20? What is the mix for that?
That's a good question. If I were more disciplined, I would be able to answer that. And it probably would be, if I were to guess, in an ideal world, it'd be 80% thinking, researching, jotting down notes and ideas, and then 20% production. Now, pre-COVID, I had a very systematized process on how to do this. My two production people, I would come in and say, I'm thinking about some topics here. Are any of these of interest to you? What would you want to know based on these topics? And the topics come from me reading lots and lots of comments. And they say, oh, we want to learn how to do this, like how to read more efficiently. I'm like, okay. And I said, let me think about it. I'd come in the next day, we'd sketch out ideas on the whiteboard, and I'd try to explain it to them. And that might take an hour or two. And then by the end of it, I have a clear roadmap. We'll record the next morning. So what I do is I go back home, I get into my keynote, I start to structure the conversation, I start to break it down so that you're peeling back the problem one small step at a time until at the very end, it's like, oh, that's how you read more efficiently. And those are the videos that we used to produce. Now since COVID, we've drastically reduced our footprint in our office space. Everybody's gone remote. So people are now living out of the city. So it's not so easy for us to get back together. And I'm hoping to figure out a new way to do that where I can get that same energy and be able to create on a consistent basis.
What is your single most viewed video and what is its topic?
The single most viewed long format video, which is about 40 minutes long, it's called Pricing Logo or Design. And people think it's scripted. And the funny thing is the part that was prepared didn't make this cut. It was cut into 3 parts. This is the third part of a 3-part video that I did a live workshop with.
Okay.
And one of my friends who's also a teacher, he came there and he's my age and he really wanted to know how we price logo design. And I kept asking him to be patient because I had to work through my material. So by the end of the workshop, he got a little frustrated and he threw out some attitude, and it created a lot of emotional friction, which I think the audience tuned in for. So he's like, look, are you going to tell me how much you charge for a logo or not? That was kind of like the vibe, the energy. I'm like, all right, let's talk about it. And we got into it, and it was just real time. We're working through the problem. He played the role of the client, and he's rather obstinate and dismissive and just all over the place. So I think for a lot of people watching, he represents a real client they've worked with in the past, and it's super frustrating. And then they watch me handle him and getting him to agree. Now, that video has over 4 million views. And I think a good portion of those people do not agree with me. because you can read them in the comments. You know, it's like, this is wrong. This is what's wrong with American capitalism. You should only charge an hourly rate, and they just give all kinds of advice that is really bad advice. And I think that's why that video performs well. The cut down version of that, there's 2 versions that are 1 minute long. One has 45 million views, and the other one is going past 20 million views. It's the same video, they're just formatted a little bit differently.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So when you kind of reflect, when you kind of step back and kind of see how you stumbled into this kind of accidentally, a little, you know, a little fortuitously, I mean, do you ever just think, wow, that's so amazing that you've been able to find your passion, you know, doing this and, you know, and make money and be successful at it? I mean, not everyone, I mean, I know you're teaching other people to do that, but, you know, not everyone gets to accomplish that in their life.
Yeah. And I find that to be tragic, Richard. I think it's our purpose in life to find our gift. And whether you're religious, you believe in energy, chakras, stardust, whatever your belief system is, I think each and every single human, if you map us on different dimensions and variables, are so unique. But what's happened is we're groomed to be like everyone else through our education system. We don't want to stand out, because standing out means you're isolated, you're made fun of, as I was when I was growing up. You're picked on, you're bullied, you're ostracized. These are not good feelings. We're social creatures. We want to belong, and in belonging, you give up a lot of your individual identity. So I think, at least the way it's worked out for me, if I'm looking at my own life, I've been able to achieve things because I tapped into the things that make me unique, the things that make me happy, and I focus in on that. I don't worry too much. The first decision was to become a designer, something that went against what my parents wanted for me, because they can just see a life ahead full of pain and misery and unemployment. And they were probably right to a degree, but you know, the world in which they lived in, that's a foreign concept. So I choose to do this. And even amongst the designers, I saw a new emerging field called motion design, and I quickly moved into that. So all my friends stayed in traditional print design, identity design systems, and I moved into motion design, incorporating live action, editing, and animation, just at the dawn of a new career, a new industry that was opening up. And I rode that wave for about 20 years. And then I saw a new opportunity to take what I've learned as an entrepreneur, what I've learned as a teacher, to move into YouTube and content creation there. So I'm riding that wave. So each time I feel like maybe I'm the luckiest person in the world, or maybe each time I'm getting closer to the core of what my gift is. And I think I have a unique mix of things, and every single person, whether you're tall, you're skinny, you're big, or whatever it is, whatever shape, size, if you tap into the uniqueness of you, you'll live a more aligned life, and you'll be in balance and harmony, and you'll be happier, healthier, and I'm almost certain you'll be wealthier.
Well, Chris, this has been a wonderful conversation and inspiring as well. I'd love to keep in touch with you. And if you do happen to find a third wave, please come back and tell me about it.
I sure will. Thank you very much, Richard.
This is Richard Hsu and Chris Do. Thanks.
Thank you.